Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello to you and welcome back to the channel where you join me on a ranch in Wyoming for the launch of quite literally the Rolls-Royce of SUVs. It's the brand new Rolls-Royce Cullinan, and today I'm going to show you everything there is to know about the new model in their lineup. We'll experience it both driving on the road and off-road. We've been going on some pretty grueling terrain already, and then I'll show you a full tour and walk around of the interior, why they've launched the car, and we can discover the land of luxury that it offers. So let's get started, take a look down the line and find the car that we're going to be driving. For the launch of the Cullinan, Rolls-Royce have brought the cars and us to the great American outdoors. We're actually near to Jackson Hole, a ski resort, where earlier on we were driving with the cars on the ski slopes themselves. And this county is one of the wealthiest areas in the entirety of the United States of America. So combine it with the terrain that we have around us, and it's the perfect launching ground to experience everything about their new model. It's a bit of a departure from the norm for Rolls-Royce. More traditionally, they're known for their luxurious saloons. For example, one of the best cars in the world in the form of the Rolls-Royce Phantom, the Ghost that comes in underneath that, and they also have their two-door cars, the Coupe, which is the Wraith, and the new convertible, the Dawn. So this is something very new for Rolls-Royce, introducing their first ever SUV, their first ever four-wheel drive car named the Cullinan. So it's been a very long wait until it's arrived on the market. Rolls-Royce didn't jump into it, they waited until they had everything set and ready to create the car that would best represent them and be as versatile as possible. And that's what we're going to experience today with some fairly variable weather, but we're also joined by the horses on the ranch, of course, and this car in Salamanca blue that I'm going to be driving and discovering all about today. It's quite fun to be in this lineup, joined by the horses. But the thing with the Cullinan is you immediately, of course, appreciate that it is a Rolls-Royce. You have those distinct design features. For example, at the front, the proud and high front grille, the large piece that it is, sitting beneath the Spirit of Ecstasy. The shape and general lines, it's not quite as large as I originally thought that the car might have been when they did go on to launch it, but it is loaded with different pieces of technology as well. The interior, we can take a quick glance at this, and you'll see some touches that we've seen in other Rolls-Royce models, but the finest materials absolutely everywhere that you look. In traditional Rolls-Royce style, the rear doors also open towards the back. You have a number of different seating configurations available, but this particular car with the blue and the light interior is a very, very smart specification. Then from the doors, you have the ability actually to close them just like that, or to close it manually, should you prefer. But as we come around towards the back of the car, they installed or designed this bustle back, a traditional style that you might have found in older cars where you could transport luggage on the rear, but it's a split-fold tailgate. Of course, the car is really quite tall, but the way the windows are designed, for example, the C-pillar is actually behind the seats. They sit just inside and slightly towards the front as we have the horses heading around us. But many features that are distinct from a Rolls-Royce, and as you can see, the car is quite dirty. We have been driving it and using it and experiencing it, and I will tell you more about that as we continue this journey. But basically, this was designed to be a car that is more versatile than any former Rolls-Royce. More in terms of the usability of it, whether it's to take the car to the opera or to throw the kids' rugby stuff in the boot and take it down to the games. You can see, I mean, just looking around at some very styled lines, for example, the shoulder line that runs up the sharpness of the front with a very, very squared off front, running all the way towards the rear with a lower line that just accentuates down and shows you the muscle of the rear arches. You have the spear that runs at the centre height of the wheel axles themselves, a traditional feature from Rolls-Royce models, but obviously it's just raised that a touch higher than you've found in previous vehicles, but with up here the 6.75 litre twin turbocharged V12, which gives you 850 Newton meters of torque. So we're going to take this for a drive. I'll be able to tell you everything else about it as we do get underway. But for the moment, let's just step in because the rain's just started. The weather today is pretty variable. I want to start it up for you with the button here on the left, where it comes into life very, very quietly. And in fact, if you do close the doors, which you can do with the button here, and bring them to a close, inside is silence, just the noise of some air conditioning. The tyres have trick sound deadening technology, the windows insulated and glazed to the highest degree. And we've also got an illuminated Spirit of Ecstasy at the front, which is a lovely option to have, the digital displays. So let's head on out and see what it's like. When you think of driving a Rolls-Royce, the first things that come to your mind are comfort, elegance, quietness, and you really do get that sensation in here. Just driving it along like this, you have the lightness of the steering wheel, it's a thin steering wheel, and you have that inclination to drive it like a chauffeur, as quietly as you can, as subtly and gently as you can. It glides over the road, so the technology in the tyres, the Continental Sport tyres, this car wears 22-inch wheels. You can have it with 21s or 22s, 22-inch being the largest wheel that Rolls-Royce have made. Like the Phantom, they're a special tyre that's filled with foam to quieten the car even more. There's a weight penalty that comes as a result of the various bits of sound insulation around the car, but the result is something that is near on silent when you're just cruising and wafting along like this, carrying the weight forward. So yes, it's 2.5 tons or so of weight, but it has so much power available, and you get the torque so early in the rev range. We're talking 571 horsepower and 850 newton meters, but getting that from 1600 RPM means that virtually in any situation you have instant power available to you. You don't have shift paddles. You're not expected to have a sporty drive like that with the car. It has the 8-speed automatic gearbox that's satellite aided, so it knows where you are, it knows where the corners are coming, and it will choose automatically to lower the gear before you get there if that's going to be required. But basically it means that you as the driver have this very, very gentle experience while you're just cruising along in whatever scenario it might be. And of course right now we're driving on the regular roads, but what we've noticed is when we go off-road, as we will shortly, you almost get that same sensation in that situation as you do in a normal everyday drive, showing what the car is capable of, but how it can do it so effortlessly. And this is one of the big terms that's being used around this car: effortlessly everywhere. And that is definitely a sensation that you do get out of it. So driving in the car, you have the comfortable seats. Everything you look at and touch and feel is incredibly nice and just very high quality and premium. That's what you expect. You feel you have this raised seating position. Unlike any other Rolls-Royce model, for example, the waistline, the window line of the car sits lower relatively to the driver, to the occupants, than before, which gives you more of a view of what's going on around you. Obviously it's a taller vehicle than they've more traditionally made. You still have the Spirit of Ecstasy out at the front of the car, and as I just turned on the wipers, it's loaded with technology, a touchscreen, the automatic wipers, lights, everything you'd expect from that front. And then you get to the suspension system. So of course the car is riding on an electronically controlled air suspension system, which adjusts 1,000 times a second to what it's doing to smoothen out that ride experience as much as possible. It's a new setup with a double wishbone at the front and a 5-link suspension setup at the rear, of course to be able to handle the off-roading characteristics. And one thing that's then interesting about taking the car off-road is that inside you have a single button that engages the car into an off-road mode to cover about 90% of use cases. So you can go into the expert configuration and change things more, but it's simple, it's easy, it's versatile, and you don't have to worry too much about what you're doing. You just enjoy the ride. The car calms you, it takes over. And from experience in the Phantom, for example, you get to your destination, you get out of the Rolls-Royce, and you're genuinely more relaxed than when you actually got into it in the first place. It's a soothing environment, and that's what they work so hard to achieve. So they didn't want to just bring an SUV to the market. It's a hugely growing segment of the market, as we see completely across the board, how many cars are becoming this more raised up platform, from the regular German manufacturers, for example, just about everything, to be completely honest. And Rolls-Royce wanted to wait until they could set everything up correctly, until it could be done as perfectly as customers demand a Rolls-Royce to be. And that expectation is high. Pretty much any product in any category is compared to a Rolls-Royce. As we cruise along a faster flowing road, the overwhelming sensation is the serenity of the car, the peacefulness, the quietness, the ease with which it glides and floats along the tarmac. There is nothing else that touches this pinnacle in terms of a relaxed driving experience. You have a few fun and distinct features for a Rolls-Royce. For example, the power reserve that tells you the amount of available power, so 100% by default when you're gliding like this, and it works in the inverse direction, counting down towards 0. And just the general style and feel, there's nothing else like it. But let's head from here now, having driven in a gentle environment, to go off-road and see how it handles that. We're venturing off the main roads then. We've got a bit of gravel track before we get to the proper off-roading. This is soft roading, I think we can call it. But even here, the terrain that we're cruising along, it doesn't feel right in a Rolls-Royce, and I think what we're about to get to is really not going to feel right. This is really not an environment that a few years ago you would have ever imagined seeing a Rolls-Royce, yet here we are with the Cullinan SUV. So the car is actually built around the architecture that's used in the Phantom. Of course, adjusted, it's taller, it's actually slightly shorter. The car is about 5 meters, 30 centimeters in length. It houses the suspension system that right now in the off-road mode is actually lifted by 40 millimeters from standard. You can also lower it 40 meters by a double press of the unlock key from the standard position, so 8 centimeters lower than it is right now to make it a little bit easier to get in and out. And also from the boot, you can lower just the rear to put your luggage in without having to lift it high. But just walking around the car, the features that you notice that are really distinct, of course the grille at the front end, how proud it is coming towards this point at the front. It's a different installation to how you'd see it on the Phantom, where the grille would more wrap around and just be a more significant piece. It's flanked either side by the LED lights with the RR logo that you can see inside them here. And coming down, the way it's shaped, the way it's very square in its shape, the proportions are emphasised in this way throughout the car, give it that presence, that poise at the front end in particular. And you'll notice the way the lines slightly come down towards the front. They give it an agility and a direction, a sportiness heading towards the front. So it's an aluminium chassis. Obviously up front we have this engine. Just come around and actually show you the engine that we do have inside the car. Lever just under here to release that with a double pull. And then in the front we have this 6.75 litre twin turbocharged V12, 571 horsepower, 850 newton meters. Top speed is limited to 155 miles per hour, 250 kilometers per hour, and it will get you from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5 seconds flat, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, which is 62 miles per hour, in 5.2. Then that goes through the 8-speed automatic gearbox. It's a permanent all-wheel drive system with a rear bias in normal configuration, but you can actually put it into expert mode, where it then locks it into a 50-50 setup, with the power being distributed evenly, just to really, I guess, enhance the off-road driving experience. I very much like the illuminated Spirit of Ecstasy that you have worn at the very front of the car. I've not really shown you much at the rear at this stage, or the boot, but we will fully explore this and go through it in all of the details. But for now, let's head to some gnarlier off-road. At the moment, we are actually at 8,200 feet of altitude. That's actually really pretty high. We're opening up into a clearing, but now it's about descending back down. We come up a path up towards the top of this area, and this is where we can use features like the hill descent control, for example. So we've got it in the off-road mode, not in the expert mode. But hill descent control, as we've seen in other vehicles, is where it's a bit like a speed limiter and cruise control, in that you would set your downhill speed. I would enable this right now, use the cruise control toggles to set it for, let's say, 8 miles an hour, and it will now handle everything, the traction, the distribution of power, and ensure that we continue descending down the hill at 8 miles an hour. You can use this from, well, you can enable it from 2 to 40 miles an hour. It will operate from 2 to 30 miles an hour in total. But this, you know, an off-roading feature, the car controls it again. And just cruising here, actually, in the off-road environment, let's just turn this off for a second, go back into normal driving. It's again peaceful and quiet on a dirt track. How does this make sense for a Rolls-Royce? It cruises along. Yes, it's quite a heavy car in terms of weight, but you don't necessarily feel it because of the way the steering is so light. With the steering wheel itself, your involvement, your interaction, that's what you're holding after all. And we just cruise along over this kind of terrain. Look at this in front of us, with these ridges, the rivets in the ground. In this car, you'd never have been able to do this in another Rolls-Royce, but in fact, they've linked it back to history, to 1913, when actually a Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost was victorious in an Alpine rally. So there has been a history of Rolls-Royces being off-roading cars. In fact, they've been used for shooting, they've been used for going cross-country in India and the likes. And now, well, now's the perfect car for it, and you can even get a viewing platform or something like that in the boot. I'll show you in the boot a little bit later on. But here, with this view that opens up in front of us, what a stunning location. The weather has been all over the place today, but the sun is out in front. And here we are going through the bumps and uneven ground in a Rolls-Royce. It's still ridiculous to say it. With this view in front of us, it is incredibly windy right here, but I'm going to jump into the back of the Cullinan to experience it a little bit more from back here. So you've got this view through to the front, but the material fit and finish in the rear is just as high quality as you have at the front. Back here, you have these buttons, one on each side, to open the displays, where you have access to all of your information that you have on the iDrive system, the Rolls-Royce infotainment system up front. You can independently control the screen in the picnic table, so I think if you just press the right side, it folds away the screen on its own. Ah, that's to close it all up, and then one press of the right side just opens the picnic table itself, which of course is a very nice finish with the exposed wood that you have there. You've got the back rolled leather here as per the front of the dashboard as well, just for this car. The ginormous panoramic roof above us. But this is where you can see this feel of having that third window slightly part of the rear section as opposed to where it would normally be in the luggage area. Very, very nice place to be. And then here we can close the door in style. Here we are then, and you have to remember the terrain that we're driving. There's another Cullinan that's actually following us at the moment, so you can see the bumps and terrain that we're going over. It's actually crazy to see the suspension at work and how the car itself is sitting so smooth. And that's one of the famed things about Rolls-Royces, the magic carpet ride. They refer to that obviously with the Phantoms, but also in here, relative to what we're currently driving, it's definitely right up there. And obviously I'm sitting in the back in comfort. I've got the lovely leather of these seats. We've got some big bumps we're just going through now that we will see on the car behind when he makes it through those in a second. But that shouldn't really be happening. You can't drive here in a normal vehicle. You need a proper off-roader, and this is able to handle it. And I've arrived back at base, where I'm going to take you now on a complete tour of the interior of the blue car that I've been driving. And believe me, inside there are some very nice luxuries and a lot of technology to explore. But before we get to that car in detail, I'd like to show you something installed on this dark maroon, almost purple car behind me. Now, being darker paintwork, you can see the dirt from the driving today, but of course it is the four-wheel drive SUV. We have been using these cars as intended. So if we come round towards the split fold tailgate at the rear, as another one just drives by, open up the upper section, open up the lower section, and inside here you have what Rolls-Royce call the recreational module. So where the Phantom has the special gallery in the dashboard to allow the customer to bespoke their car and go even more down the lines of creativity, this has, in particular here, the installation of the viewing platform. Now in future, there will be other modules that customers can order for the back, but this, quite literally as the name suggests, is a fold-out seat and a viewing platform. And if I hold the button here, we can open it up and you'll be able to see how this works. For example, picture the scene, you're going for a picnic, you're parked up watching the kids playing sport. You literally just do this, and there you have a two-seat fold-out viewing platform, and even in the middle a fold-out table that lifts up as well. This is quite fun. Rolls-Royce have always been inventive with the additional options you can add to their vehicles, and I think this is, well, just about the perfect example. So let's fold this away, tuck it back in again. The seats fold, in one goes, I think the other goes as it reaches back into position, and there we have it. Tucked away and complete. Now you can either press that button again to lift up the lower tailgate, or you can press the button at the top to close both together. You also have a few other controls inside. I think we'll get to that with the blue car. So let's just for the moment press this and you can see it closing down. So let me take this and let's check this one out. I'm actually going to leave the Salamanca blue car and show you the interior of this Jubilee silver one behind, because it is really quite different. But before we do, one last look at the specification, the wonderful specification on this interior. The dual tone leather, the light and dark, the wood trim inlays. I think this is a brilliant configuration. We've got the Cullinan side sill plates. Actually quite interesting the way the sill is inside the exterior of the door, which prevents it getting as dirty as it otherwise would if of course you have garments that you don't want to get dirty as you step in. But Cullinan itself is actually quite an interesting name for the car. It's something very different to usual Rolls-Royces. More traditionally, they are named with spooky names, the likes of Phantom and Ghost. Cullinan is actually named after a diamond, in fact the largest diamond in the world, which was then broken down into 7 parts, 2 of which form the crown and the scepter of the crown jewels. So quite a special thing. Another car just ready to cruise on out past us now. A very bright white interior inside there. Quick glimpse of the car on the move as we come now to take a look at this car in Jubilee Silver, and specifically its interior. Have a look at this. Armagnac with the secondary colour in black. So let me step in here because it is time to explore. And I'm going to start this by firing the car into life. Of course, a very, very quiet startup from the V12 from its insulation. Let's close the door just for now by pressing the button. I love that, such a signature feature of Rolls-Royces. You've got a button here for the driver's side, also for the passenger side. Then the rear occupants can do it with their own buttons. So let's have a look around the interior of the Cullinan. And let's start right in front of us with that digital dashboard. It is very, very neatly integrated. It almost looks analog. So you have those silver bezels, which give the impression of the digital display inside having, well, literally an analog style. You can see the power reserve gauge to the left that I was talking about. We have our speedometer in the center. It doesn't go any higher than it needs to. 160 is the highest shown, given that the top speed of the car is 155. And then over to the right side, we have the fuel gauge and the temperature. You have a few other displays, but basically not much more information than you actually need from the car. It's all presented tidily, organized in a Rolls-Royce style. If we then move over to the right, in the center, you have the second digital display, which in this case is effectively the system we find in a BMW, the iDrive system, well developed. New interface and skin to it, new appearance, but navigation, media, controls. We'll go through some of that in a moment. The steering wheel has a few controls on it. To the left side, the adaptive cruise control, the sensor you might have spotted down at the front grille. You can go up and down, set, turn on and off, resume your last speed, and use these buttons to increase or decrease the distance to the vehicle in front. Perhaps these could be slightly nicer, these buttons, if I have to fault a Rolls-Royce, but it's a very small thing. Then over on this side, you have your telephone and media controls, and the button to activate the microphone to give the car voice controls. To the left of the steering wheel, you have your light control, so you can pop it onto auto, your parking lights, and here, your assistant systems button. So if you press that, it brings up here some of the configuration, and you can just see some of these, how you can configure it: pedestrian warning, front collision warning, latent departure warning, blind spot detection. Just a few features to help you from a safety perspective. Beneath that, we have the handbrake, automatic handbrake, and the hold. The car has a fantastic sound system. Honestly, it sounds brilliant. The system that this car has, yeah, it's phenomenal. The button for the power for tailgate, mirror controls, windows, usual buttons you expect to find there. Then beneath that, you have the buttons here for your memory seats. You can select the opposite side of the seat, your memory 1 and 2, and this is the massage seat. So you have 3 different stages of seat massaging as well. Your other seat controls are just down here on the side with your lumbar for the backrest, the base, and the front section that can move forwards and back too. Down there, decent sized storage bucket, but given it's just started raining quite significantly, let's actually get that door closed. You've got a lovely piece of trim across the top, small grab handle area here, and then down below, excuse the dirty carpets, you have deep pile carpets. Lovely, lovely carpets to put your feet on, and they work well. Very nice finish item to have. So in the center, different trims available. As you can see here, this is the back rolled leather that's available specifically for Cullinan. You can actually fold down this display and turn off the main screen. You have your air vents, but this is where things really come into their own with the Rolls-Royce. Everything you touch and feel is just quality, premium materials, a luxury feel to it. For example, you could have a digital system for the air conditioning, but how much nicer is it to have these toggles that just feel high quality and ooze class a Rolls-Royce way. Then you've got your heated seats, your heated steering wheel. Turn these off, I don't want to get particularly hot right now. Your front and rear window, your climate control on and off, hazards, lock, and then of course your button for volume, raising and lowering the volume, turning on and off your music. To control the main part of the system is used by this toggle in the center, just behind the cup holders, which themselves are behind a closing. See, even that, the movement of that, the way it glides back, just lovely. In the center then you have your controller, a few hotkeys to jump between different modes, menu up at the top, back and options, Rolls-Royce badge in the center, and you can toggle this through. So you can see just a touch of what we have here, scrolling all the way around between our different modes. So if we go into my vehicle, we can see some of the settings and controls that we can access here, and even raise and lower the Spirit of Ecstasy on the front. Driver profiles, vehicle status, you can see a host of different things that you can cycle through and change in here, but basically it's not too complicated. There's not too much that you need to experiment with. So either side of this we have a few controls. On the right is our off-road selector that you saw earlier. So if you give that one press, you then get into off-road settings. So here, if you turn off off-road, there you go into full traction, and here you go into expert mode with traction off, where you have complete 50-50 split effectively, and then one press again will activate it and turn you back into normal on-road mode, where you can again explore the different settings and configure the car however you would like. Above that you have the hill descent control that we were using earlier, the cruise control for descending hills, literally. And here, when you've gone into off-road mode, it adjusts the suspension, so you could see the lights there as it's acting, and in this case I've just lowered it, so you can raise and lower. You've got your cameras and parking, so the park assist where it will detect a space and help you park, and the camera system where you have 360 cameras available. You can see the people walking around just behind the car at the moment. It's actually the first time Rolls-Royce have offered a 360 camera system, so with the cameras looking down at the front, it gives you the ability, I believe, to load up that complete system when you're putting the vehicle into reverse, for example, which you do like that. You can see exactly here the top-down view of where we're currently parked. So you have the stalk on the right with low for low range on the gearbox. You would put it down for drive, up for reverse, or press the N for park. You also have the stalk down here for your lights and wipers, or for your wipers, sorry, on the right hand side, and then the stalk on the left does your lights and the board computer as well. But that's more or less everything you have here. Just a small little cubby hole back here where we have the key currently in the middle, which you can see is finished in the matching leather to go with the car. I'll actually put that in my pocket. I won't keep it, I'll have to give it back, but at least I'll be able to demo a few things from outside. Continuing across, the Cullinan clock up here on the centre of the dash. Of course in Phantom this is where you have the gallery feature. Glove box down below, not the largest glove box in the world, but of course on the right hand side more storage. You can see those controls that you have on the door panel, and we also have here the spec sheet for this specific car. So Jubilee Silver, Armagnac Interior, Open Pore Blackwood. That's of course this trim that we've got in here. Very, very high specification of the car in general, as you can see, and then some information. And I suppose one thing that stands out to me, the car is 2,660 kilos. This is no light car by any stretch of the imagination. However, I think the last thing I haven't shown you is just inside the armrest, where it's illuminated. And down here you actually have a pair of USB-C ports. So Rolls-Royce embracing technology with that, and obviously connecting for modern devices. So let's leave the power on for the moment and make, in this weather, a brave dash towards the rear, just to explore this in more detail, where, by the way, here you have the Rolls-Royce umbrella in the door. It's done like that so that the front passenger could easily reach it. You have one on each side and it clicks back in, or you press this button to pop it out. Always one of my favourite things about a Rolls-Royce. Anyway, I'm getting a bit wet, so let's climb straight back in here, where the button to close the door is right here. Back into quietness. We have actually got a blind here for the rear window, which is a nice touch, so you could enclose the rear. This is again one thing that's interesting, just looking through the back, the way this whole rear area is kind of enclosed in its own cabin. You've obviously got a shelf here, well insulated, keeps the back as a separate thing, but in the rear, I mean, we showed earlier how you have this system which really mimics everything that's available to the driver in the front via the touchscreen. In fact, that is also a touchscreen. I didn't demonstrate it in full earlier, but you have everything in here as per the front that you could imagine wanting to be able to control inside the car, obviously on both sides, not just on one, in case you were wondering. You can open that up. It just tidies away in a very nice way. You know, it's so cleanly integrated. The screen tucks completely away, out of sight. And, oh, I need to press the other side. There we go, to completely close it away. Again, like the front down here, you have the nice finish to the temperature toggles and your climate control settings. We've also got the deep pile carpets, which are just so lovely. The same wood trim finish, and even if we fold the armrests open here, you can see you've got a storage compartment. You also at the front have some cup holders. So this all all more or less, I suppose, as you would expect. Up top, you have a few controls for the lights in the car, and I think the control for the panoramic roof is up in the front panel above the driver and front passenger. So it is a car that you could be chauffeured in. I mean, look how much room I've got here, and I'm trying. If I sit back, look at this. I've even got my bag down in front of me, and there's just a lot of space, and that was in a comfortable position in terms of the front seat. This is the air conditioning vents you have tucked down here. The sound system continues. Got all sorts of toggles, and obviously that's the lock. Yeah, it's just really nice. And then you have to remember to push it that way. This weather, however, is desperately not nice today. But let me make a quick brave run for it. Let's jump back out. Last thing for the moment then, and remember the engine of this is running, and you actually can barely hear it. Magma Red, that was the launch colour of the car. But let's just come back to the boot of this car for a second, because I want to show you how those rear seats fold open. You have the buttons here, which literally, when you press them, will fold that seat forward, as if by magic. And when it's nearly down, it then adjusts the headrests, if needs be, to ensure that it completely folds away. So let's just tuck down the second side. See that process in action. You've got the 40-20-40 folding rear seats there, and it tucks all the way down. I'll open the tailgate again just for a moment. Oh, that button's not for the tailgate. This button's for the tailgate. That other button is the next thing I wanted to show you. This button is that rear part of the floor that you can see just there tucking down for the most space, or if you press it, it raises it up so that you have the longest, flattest rear floor possible if you need to put in a big object without it kind of running into that back wall. How trick is that? Just small things. This, the top shelf, can fold up, completely fold away, and in fact, you can even store it in here, tucked away, out of the way, which is a lovely feature to not have this cluttering. Otherwise, it stays in place and means that you don't have to worry too much about people being able to see into the boot. So you can, in the opposite way, fold the seats back and bring them back up again, so it adjusts the headrests, and then up it comes, all the way, back into place. Not many cars have this done by motors. Of course, there is a weight penalty as a result, but the significant advantage of it is ease of use, versatility, practicality. Just a big part of what this car is about all around. So let's get these folded right the way back. And of course you could then have a viewing platform or something else installed in here. Then just for me to stand back for a moment, let's just close this down. The weather is horrific right now. Let me jump back into the front just for the last moment, because of course I have left the car running, but goodness me, this is not pleasant in the slightest. I've got back in the car just to put the suspension back in its normal ride height as opposed to being raised or lowered. But let's just turn this off for a moment and make a last dive for the canopy behind the car to get away from the rain, to talk about a couple more things about it. So I've got the key now in my pocket. You have the Rolls-Royce button in the center to lock the car. A double press of the unlock button at the top is what will lower the suspension by 40 millimeters. And you also have a button at the bottom to open up the two parts of the rear tailgate, just to make your life that touch easier. If we come around though, just hit the lock button here to close it back up. We've not talked too much yet about the rear of the car. As per other Rolls-Royce models, you have that distinct chrome bar above the number plate area, the Rolls-Royce logo right above that. Either side you have the pillar style LED tail lights, and then down at the bottom, beneath the chrome stripe there, you actually have black bumpers, as opposed to them being body coloured. Now that is done, again, to emphasise the sporty character of the car, to show that it's not afraid of venturing into the wilderness as we've done today and being driven properly. It also takes away some of the wealth of colour. Of course, it's a very large car, very large panels, and as a result, if it's in a bright colour, for example, the Magma Red launch colour that we have here with the tan interior, that's a really nice spec. It just takes away a small touch of that. Now, the car is available with 3 different rear seating configurations. So the cars we've seen today have the triple bench seat, but it's also available with 2 other 2-seat configurations separated from either side, one of which has complete lounge functionality, the other slightly less in terms of specification. But here we go, the Cullinan, a first drive today. Now what you have to remember is that this car starts in the UK at around £240,000. Don't expect one to leave the Rolls-Royce factory in Goodwood though. I think for anything really less than about 300,000. The big thing though, they are sold out for over a year already, and that is before the first drives. Clearly quite a significant and important product for Rolls-Royce, a long time in the making, but here it is, and it is what you think it's going to be. It is quiet, it is elegant, it is calming, it is a Rolls-Royce in an SUV form factor, it is the the Rolls-Royce of SUVs, as you would expect it to be. So, for me today, it's been a long day up at altitude. As you can hear, I'm pretty short on breath, but an amazing day. So big thanks to Rolls-Royce, and I hope you've enjoyed this full look into every aspect of the new Cullinan. That's it though for me. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers!